Welcome back to Keep It Real Boxing. This is Cypherbox, and Dillian Whyte recently just put up a post on Instagram. I put it up the other day on my YouTube channel, calling out Deontay Wilder. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to play you that video again and then give you my take on the whole situation.
So, quick message to Deontay Wilder. You said if I fight Luis Ortiz and beat him, you'll fight me. No, I ain't got no problem with that. I got one request. Send us an email or a contract to me or to Matchroom saying if Dillian Whyte fight Luis Ortiz and beat him, I'll fight him next. I won't dodge him. I won't fight anyone else. I'll fight Dillian Whyte next. If you do that, I'll fight Luis Ortiz and I'll smash his head in inside 6 rounds, and then we can make the fight. Be a man. Don't be a bitch. Man up and let's make the fight happen. I've accepted your terms. You said fight Luis Ortiz. I said I'll fight him, but you have to guarantee you'll fight me next. Let's get it on. That's it. Send a quick email, guaranteed and signed, and then I'll fight Luis Ortiz. And I guarantee I'll knock him out quicker than you did. I'll knock him out in 6 rounds. I'll smash that old man to bits. Word.
Okay, look. I like Dillian Whyte. I like him a lot. You heard what he had to say there. He says basically he'll fight Luis Ortiz because Deontay Wilder told him that if you fight Luis Ortiz, he'd fight Dillian Whyte next. He's saying I'll fight Luis Ortiz, put it in a contract, put it in an email, send it out to us, etc. All that sort of stuff. Here's my point on this whole situation. This fight with Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder could have happened a long time ago. Yeah? What Dillian Whyte's asking of, Deontay Wilder is what Deontay Wilder was asking of Eddie Hearn. He said, I'll fight Dillian Whyte. I'll fight him in the UK. I'll take the $4 million you're offering as well. I'll take all of that, providing you put Anthony Joshua's name on the contract. Yeah? Now, back last year, Eddie Hearn was totally against that. He says, no, they're 2 different fights. We don't do, 2 fights in 1 contract. Doesn't work that way, etc. Fine. A few months ago, Eddie Hearn himself turned around and said, yeah, actually, you know what? We could do that now. Come over here, fight Dillian Whyte. Let's build the Anthony Joshua fight, and we'll put Anthony Joshua's name in the contract. So, that's Eddie Hearn changing his mind, obviously, as always, and contradicting himself a little bit, as he always does. And actually, you know what? Give me a sec. I'm going to play the video for you where Eddie Hearn actually said that, because I know what a lot of you guys are like. Not the video, the audio clip. Give me a second.
It's very simple. I think there's a real chance that Dillian could fight Wilder in June, because Joshua isn't going to be ready to box till August, September, right? The only question regarding Joshua Wilder, and by the way, Anthony Joshua has the fight of his life next Saturday, so we'll come back to that. The only way that fight's going to happen is in September to December of 2018. So if Wilder wants a fight, and by the way, a fight that's going to massively raise his profile for the Joshua fight, Dillian Whyte's there. That fight's there, and they're talking about, before if it was, remember when Shirley Winkle come out and said, if he fights Whyte, we'll do a 2-fight deal. No problem, we can look at that.
So there you have it. There's Eddie Hearn in an interview, basically saying that if Deontay Wilder fights Dillian Whyte, they will throw Anthony Joshua's name into the contract. Okay, so that's my first point. This fight could have been made a long, long time ago. Dillian Whyte should have put some pressure on Eddie Hearn and said, hey, you said that on camera. You said it on an interview, so let's make the fight. Offer the deal to Deontay Wilder. Throw Anthony Joshua's name into the contract because you said that's agreeable to you now. And let's make this fight. Right? This fight could have been made a long, long time ago. That's my first point. My second point on this subject, okay, is that Dillian Whyte's now saying, send me an email, send me a contract, guaranteeing me that if I fight Luis Ortiz and I beat him, you, Deontay Wilder, will fight me next. My point is here, Deontay Wilder doesn't have to do nothing. And I'll explain to you why. He's in a position where he doesn't have to do any of that, because he'll just sit back and think to himself, well, I don't need to do that, because regardless if I say yes or no to that, you still got to fight Luis Ortiz. Because the WBC have mandated that you fight Luis Ortiz for the second mandatory challengers position for Deontay Wilder's WBC belt. So really, Deontay Wilder doesn't have to agree to anything that Dillian Whyte's asking for in that video that you saw at the beginning. Right? So let's talk about this whole mandatory challengers position, you know, the WBC number one ranked position, this whole entire mess the WBC have caused within their heavyweight division between Dominic Breazeale and Dillian Whyte. Now, this is just basically the WBC being greedy. Now, they would have charged Dillian Whyte a whole load of sanctioning fees for him to work his way into the position of number one ranked. Yeah. Remember, he's not the mandatory challenger. A lot of people out there think that he's a mandatory challenger. He is not. He is the WBC's number one ranked heavyweight. On the flip side, they've done the same to Dominic Breazeale. They've charged him probably a whole load of sanctioning fees for him to work his way into the position of the mandatory challengers position. Yeah, hope you're following me here. Okay, so Dominic Breazeale is now the number one mandatory challenger, and then you've got Dillian Whyte, who's the WBC number one ranked heavyweight in their rankings, not the mandatory challenger. So they know they've made a mess here, right? They've got a bit greedy, charged a whole load of sanction fees, saw a way you're making money, etc., and they've caused a complete mess. So what they've in turn have decided to do is turn around and said, well, Dominic Breazeale, we've said he's the number one mandatory challenger. His last fight was a final eliminator. We've got to keep that. At the same time, Dillian Whyte is the number one ranked heavyweight in our rankings. So how do we satisfy him as well? We know. Let's make him fight Luis Ortiz for, you know, the second mandatory challengers position. And I can imagine what's going to happen out of this, yeah? If Dillian Whyte beat Luis Ortiz, right, I could then see them turning around and say, well, hold on, let's make Dillian Whyte now fight Dominic Breazeale, and let's have a final eliminator between them two for the mandatory challengers position. Again, it's another way of charging sanction fees and making money off fighters. Yeah, you got to remember how these boxing commissions and organisations work. In my opinion, personally, they should just do away with mandatory challengers. Yeah, and it should be champion always fights number one ranked. So if you're number one ranked in any division, any boxing organisation, that if you're number one ranked, you automatically have earned yourself a shot against the champion, and that fight should be ordered, that the champion fights the number one ranked. And you should forget about all these mandatory challengers stuff. It's nonsense. You know, work your way into WBC into the number one ranked position, and then you get to fight, get a shot at the champ, rather than have all this confusion with mandatory challengers and first mandatory challengers and second mandatory challengers. And it's a complete mess they've caused. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, so I get where Dillian Whyte and his complaint is coming from. I do understand it, but with his appeal, he's going to put an appeal in against this decision where the WBC have mandated him to fight Luis Ortiz for the second mandatory challenger position. What's going to come out of that? They can't turn around and say, well, we're taking your Dominic Breazeale, we're taking your position back. You know, you're no longer the mandatory challenger to Deontay Wilder, because then he'll complain and say, well, hold on, I've paid you sanctioning fees as well. So the best that's going to come out of this is that their resolution is that they'll just turn around and say, at best, they say, all right, fine, don't fight Luis Ortiz, Dillian Whyte. You don't need to fight Luis Ortiz, but you will have to fight a final eliminator against Dominic Breazeale. But then that could also upset Dominic Breazeale, because Dominic Breazeale will say, well, hold on, I just fought a final eliminator. Well, I've got to fight another one for. I've got to pay more money. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So I honestly think the WBC, at best, if they do decide to come up with a resolution for it, would be that they'll get Dillian Whyte to fight Dominic Breazeale in a final eliminator. But then that could upset Dominic Breazeale. So they may even turn around and say, well, hold on, that'll upset Dominic Breazeale. So guess what? You know, we're not overturning the decision that we've made. You have to fight Luis Ortiz and for the second mandatory challengers position. I hope that made sense to you guys, yeah? It is confusing, it is a mess, it sounds like a mess, but that's what happens when these boxing commissions and organisations start getting greedy. You know, and they think about the money. Oh, let's charge him a sanctioning fee. Let's, you know, they charge a lot of money for these sanctioning fees and for these fighters to work their way into those positions. Let's not forget that. Now, here's my next point. I don't know what Dillian Whyte's hoping to achieve by becoming a mandatory challenger, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Is he's not going to get that shot at Deontay Wilder anytime soon. Okay? Mauricio Sulaiman, I did a video on this ages ago, I played an audio clip of it as well. Mauricio Sulaiman himself has turned around and said that Deontay Wilder has just fulfilled his obligations and he's made his mandatory defense against Stiverne recently. He says it will be a long time before he's required to do another mandatory defense of his title. He is currently free to fight whoever he wants, make a voluntary defense or a unification fight with Anthony Joshua. He's free to do what he wants, which means this fight, in terms of Deontay Wilder, his next mandatory defense of his title will probably be at the back end of this year or early next year. So even if Dillian Whyte puts himself in a position as the mandatory challenger to Deontay Wilder's WBC belt, he's not going to get it straight away. So you might as well fight Luis Ortiz. And the reason I'd like to see Dillian Whyte fight Luis Ortiz is because, I've said this before, Dillian Whyte hasn't got a credible name on his record. Apart from Anthony Joshua, and let's face it, back then when he fought Anthony Joshua, they were both coming up, they were both working their way up the rankings, etc. So that doesn't really count either. Yeah? But he hasn't fought anyone of a real credible name. Right? Everyone gives Deontay Wilder a lot of stick. Obviously, he's fought Luis Ortiz recently and beat him. Yeah. But what about Dillian Whyte? Who's he fought? You know, Carl Froch, I played in one of my other videos, I played a soundbite of Carl Froch saying that Dillian Whyte, you know, he's still got to prove himself. He's still got a lot more to do. That's Carl Froch saying that himself. Yeah. Now, this is what makes me laugh, is that everyone's giving, you know, Dillian Whyte a lot of credit for his victory over Lucas Browne. And yes, it was an impressive knockout and he looked impressive, but against two, an out of shape, overweight, heavyweight, who fights once a year, right? Now, there was an article on BoxingScene.com a few days ago, and this is where, before the Tony Bellew versus David Haye rematch. And in this article, it's Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte saying that he hopes Tony Bellew, you know, knocks David Haye out because he doesn't like David Haye and the things that David Haye says about him. And I'm going to go straight to the bit where he starts talking about David Haye. This is a quote, by the way, on the article. So here it is. David never says anything good about me and never tries to support anything I do. He always tries to belittle my performance apart from my last performance. Okay? And he goes on to say, he said, that is a thrilling knockout. This is what David Haye had to say. That is a thrilling knockout. One of the best knockouts I have ever seen. But he went on to say, to be honest, Browne wasn't in the best of shapes. So this is David Haye. This was Dillian Whyte's reply to David Haye's comments. That's the shape Browne is always in. So what are you saying? What you are saying doesn't make any sense. So you're basically saying you agree with David Haye that Lucas Browne was out of shape, he's not in the best shape, and you're actually saying he's never in the best shape. So you picked an opponent who's never in great shape, who never looks good, who basically doesn't live the life of a fighter, he's never in good condition, and you picked that guy to fight. So what, you picked the guy to make yourself look good? To make yourself look impressive? That's what you're saying there. If you're agreeing with David Haye, you're basically agreeing with David Haye. You say, he turned around and said, and I'll quote again, he turned around and said, that's the shape Browne is always in. So what are you saying? What you are saying doesn't make sense. There you go. You know, he's agreeing with David Haye that Lucas Browne is always out of shape. So what, you handpicked an opponent so you could look impressive, look good, and then get everyone screaming your name so the fight with Deontay Wilder would take place. Which basically means you still haven't fought anyone credible anyway. So, like I said, the fight, even if he becomes a mandatory challenger, he's not going to get a fight with Deontay Wilder for a long time. So you might as well fight Luis Ortiz. And he's saying Luis Ortiz is fat, he's old, he's etc, etc, etc. He's discrediting Deontay Wilder's victory over Luis Ortiz. Then go in the ring with Luis Ortiz, bang him out of there in 3-4 rounds, make it look really impressive and say, look how easily I did that. I did it better than Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder struggled in that fight, and he had problems in that fight against Luis Ortiz. But look at the way I've done it. Guess what? Now Deontay Wilder, let's do this. Let's get it on. Do you know what I mean? You're strengthening your position within the heavyweight rankings. You know, a lot of people last time I talked about this sort of stuff with regards to Dillian Whyte, I got people hating me about it. But what is wrong with Dillian Whyte going out there, beating Luis Ortiz and strengthening his position within the heavyweight division? I don't understand. Like I said, you're not going to get a mandatory challenger's position anytime soon. Well, you might if you beat Luis Ortiz, but you're not going to get a shot at Deontay Wilder anytime soon through the mandatory challengers path. Because Mauricio Sulaiman has turned around and said blatantly that Deontay Wilder doesn't have to make a mandatory defence for a long time. He's free to make voluntary defences. He's free to make a unification fight with Anthony Joshua. So take the fight. Take Luis Ortiz on, knock him out, make it look good, make it look impressive. He's a top-ranked heavyweight, you know, probably one of the most avoided heavyweights over the last few years. We know this. So go in there and do the business. Strengthen your position in the heavyweight division. You know, like I said, regardless if he gets a mandatory position, he's not going to get Deontay Wilder anytime soon. So you might as well go in there and take on Luis Ortiz and make it look good. And strengthen your position in the heavyweight rankings. That way, Deontay Wilder, there's no excuse. Deontay Wilder can never say no to you. Say, look what I did against Luis Ortiz and I did it better than you. No? That's the way I see it. And before any of you say it, I know a lot of you are going to jump on the video and make comments saying that, well, if he gets himself in the mandatory challengers position, he automatically gets Deontay Wilder. It doesn't work like that. Yeah? If you become the mandatory challenger, yes, you have earned the right to challenge the champion for his belt, but the fight still has to be mandated and ordered by the WBC. So you could be sitting there for a long time as a mandatory challenger, waiting for the WBC to mandate the fight against Deontay Wilder, which, as I told you, Mauricio Sulaiman himself has said isn't going to happen anytime soon. So that's what I said, you might as well take the Luis Ortiz fight and strengthen your position in the heavyweight division. Again, I know what all of you are going to say. You're all going to say, well, Deontay Wilder's lining up Dominic Breazeale next. He's not looking to fight Anthony Joshua. Eddie Hearn said this, Eddie Hearn said that, whatever. Okay, my point on that is, so what? So what? What's wrong with Deontay Wilder having a plan B if the fight with Anthony Joshua does not materialise through their negotiations that they're currently going through? If the fight does not materialise, what is wrong with Deontay Wilder having a plan B? Anthony Joshua has a plan B. He's either going to fight Povetkin next, or he's going to pay Povetkin to step aside so he can fight Jarrell Miller and then fight Povetkin next. But either way, he has a plan B if the fight with Deontay Wilder does not materialise. So what's wrong with Deontay Wilder having a plan B if the fight with Anthony Joshua doesn't materialise? It's the same thing. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of you saying, oh yeah, he's fighting Dominic Breazeale, like Dominic Breazeale's some sort of bum. But then Anthony Joshua fought him after he beat Charles Martin for the IBF belt. So you didn't have a problem with Anthony Joshua facing Dominic Breazeale, but you have a problem with Deontay Wilder facing Dominic Breazeale. How does that make sense? It doesn't. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with him lining up another fighter as a plan B in case the fight with Joshua doesn't materialise. Just like there's nothing wrong with Anthony Joshua lining up a plan B with Jarrell Miller or Povetkin if the fight with Deontay Wilder does not materialise. So I'm tired of hearing that as well. There is no point to what you're saying, is basically what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with it. And, you know, Anthony Joshua recently, you know, from ringside on IFL TV's turned around and said, from ringside of Bellew Hay, the rematch, said that, you know, it's a big possibility the fight's going to happen. It's looking like Wilder's going to be next. And here's a soundbite for you guys.
Any update with Wilder?
Yeah, I think the fight's going to happen for sure.
Yeah? Confident?
Yeah, very confident.
50 mil, baby?
Yeah. But I ain't selling my soul for 50 mil.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's where I'm coming from.
We'll keep us updated on what's going on.
Yeah. Have you heard anything from Wilder?
Well, only what Eddie's saying every day. That's, you know.
What from their side?
Literally everything we hear is about what's going on is from what Eddie Hearn's saying. So, but you're confident that'll be your next fight, or?
Confident. Very confident.
So there you hear it, Anthony Joshua saying that he's very confident that his next fight is going to be Deontay Wilder. Okay, found it a little bit strange that he was asking Kugan Cassius what was going on in terms of Deontay Wilder's side and what have they said, and Kugan Cassius just kept replying saying, well, we're hearing everything we're hearing from Eddie Hearn, which Eddie Hearn says, you know, the last comment he made was that he said the fight was, you know, 70% there. He's asked Al Heyman a few questions. He's dealing with Al Heyman now, and they're talking about it behind the scene. And remember what I said, when things go quiet, that's when you know they're actually genuinely trying to make a deal behind the scenes. Because there's not as much chatter in terms of in the media as there was before. Okay, but Anthony Joshua there has turned around and said basically, you know what, I'm very confident this is going to be my next fight, meaning Deontay Wilder. Okay, talked about he's not selling his soul for 50 million though, so I don't know what he was quite referring to in that sense, but okay, whatever. All I care about is that is the fight going to get made. Yeah, and he seems to be very confident that the fight's going to be next against Deontay Wilder. What makes me really funny is that, like I said, he was asking Kugan Cassius what was going on, what's Wilder's team saying, etc., and all that sort of stuff. But shouldn't your promoter be telling you that? You know, shouldn't, you know, him and Eddie Hearn recently said in an interview that him and Anthony Joshua are on the same page as one another. And if they're on the same page as one another, and he says they're always talking to each other about this fight, then you shouldn't be asking Kugan Cassius what's going on. What's Wilder's side saying? You know, because Kugan Cassius is getting all his information from Eddie Hearn. So Anthony Joshua should be getting all his information from Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn should be updating and calling and telling Anthony Joshua every minute of, you know, whatever is going on in the deal. Or in terms of the negotiations with Al Heyman. And that's when you know, like I said, that's when you know when a deal is generally, they're trying to make a fight. It's gone quiet. It's not as loud as it was before. All you're hearing from Eddie Hearn is that we're talking to Al Heyman at the moment. That's all he's really saying. You know, and Al Heyman's quite private. You know, he works in the shadows. He doesn't come out, you know, in the spotlight like Eddie Hearn does. So, you know, good signs there. But I found it a bit odd that Anthony Joshua was asking Kugan Cassius, you know, of IFL TV, you know, what's Wilder's team saying? You know, and, you know, Kugan's reply was, well, we're getting all our information from Eddie Hearn. Everything we're hearing is coming from Eddie Hearn. So shouldn't Anthony Joshua be getting his information from Eddie Hearn as well? Do you know what I mean? It just seems strange to me anyway. And it's another thing is the way Kugan Cassius said to him, 50 mil, baby. You know, and his reply to that was, yeah, but I'm not going to sell my soul for $50 million. Okay, so I don't know what he quite meant by that, but it sounded like to me that perhaps the $50 million has been confirmed. And that's why they're now in quiet negotiations in the background talking about this fight. Because maybe Al Heyman has confirmed that the $50 million is there. I'm not saying that for definite, but it just on the basis I'm reading into what Anthony Joshua said there, and I'm reading into it and thinking maybe they've actually confirmed it now. They've confirmed the money's there. And that's why they're now progressing into further negotiations for this fight. Maybe. But the reason I brought that up was because it looks like there's a strong possibility from what both sides are saying that this fight could happen between AJ and Wilder. And going back to what I was talking about Dillian Whyte's going to be waiting a long time before he gets a shot at Deontay Wilder. And you know, or even Anthony Joshua, because there'll probably be a rematch involved or some sort. You know, I know Deontay Wilder's team said no rematch, but I'm sure Eddie Hearn will probably want to negotiate and say, no, we want a rematch clause in place, guys. You know, so either way, you know, if that happens, then Dillian Whyte's going to wait even longer for his shot at Deontay Wilder. First, he's got to get himself in a mandatory position. He's not a mandatory challenger. He's a WBC #1 ranked, but he's not a mandatory challenger. So first, he's got to get himself in that position. So take the Luis Ortiz fight, beat the guy you say is an old man and fat and, you know, he's slow and this and sort of stuff, and you could beat him easy. Go in there, beat him easy, make it look really good, make it look better than Deontay Wilder did, and strengthen your position in the heavyweight division. Either way, I don't see why you're going to complain the way you are, because in the day, for me, it looks like all roads are going to lead to Luis Ortiz anyway for you. And now I'm talking about Dillian Whyte here. Because the WBC have made a real mess out of this. They can't then turn around and say, right, well, let's screw Dominic Breazeale over now, even though he's paid all these sanctioning fees to put himself in the position that he is. At the same time, they've got to find a way to satisfy Dillian Whyte as well. And this is the way they found it. You know, or the best resolution would be from the WBC, all right, don't fight Ortiz. Go and fight Dominic Breazeale in a final eliminator. But then you could upset Dominic Breazeale, because Dominic Breazeale, like I said, might turn around and say, hey, that's not fair. I've worked myself and paid the money for this position. Why have I got to do that again for? I've already fought my final eliminator. So it's a complete mess. My point is, though, you ain't going to get a shot at Deontay Wilder anytime soon. He doesn't need to make a mandatory defense anytime soon. He's free to make voluntary defenses. He's free to make a unification fight. Yeah. At the same time, he's not going to fight you now. Think about it. If the negotiations with AJ fall through, he's going to keep you there like a carrot and dangle that carrot. Because Eddie Hearn's going to say, fight Dillian Whyte. And he's going to say, I'll fight Dillian Whyte, but first put AJ's name on the contract. Do you understand? As well, why would Deontay Wilder, you know, he's got a power play there in a sense. So he's going to keep Dillian Whyte on that carrot. He's going to keep him there, that little carrot dangling like that, and saying to Eddie Hearn, all right, I'll fight Dillian Whyte, but you better make sure you attach Anthony Joshua's name to the contract. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So why would he do that? Think of it from a political point of view, a business point of view, a strategic point of view, should I say. From a strategic point of view, Deontay Wilder is just going to keep Dillian Whyte hanging there like a little carrot, right? So it wouldn't make sense for him to give up that power play and just fight Dillian Whyte when he knows he can use Dillian Whyte. And if the negotiations with Anthony Joshua fall through, he could turn and say, I'll fight Dillian Whyte if you put Anthony Joshua's name on the contract. There you go, Eddie. That's what I'm trying to say. Look, there's loads of things going on here. You need to start thinking outside of the box a little bit, guys, and start looking at things from, I know some of you are diehard AJ fans, Wilder fans, whatever it is. You need to stop and actually just think outside of the box. Take all the emotion out of it and use a bit of common sense. All right, guys, look, that's all I've really got to say on this whole situation. I would love to see Dillian Whyte against Luis Ortiz, to be honest with you. Of course, I want to see AJ versus Wilder. Let's make sure, that's the one I really want to see. Hopefully that fight does get made and there's no problems in the negotiation period. But we'll have to just wait and see. As always, guys, let me know what you think. Like, share and subscribe. Until next time, this is Cyphbox reminding you to keep it real.